Hello, friends. I'm back. Kinda took the day off yesterday. And it was a moment of repose and reflection. Although, as you can see here, I did actually do a background painting, so I couldn't completely stay away from the work for an entire day. Couldn't do it. But interestingly enough, this is actually the back half of the show. So if we look at the, sorry about that, wiggling my headphones. If we look at the task going forward from here, yeah, these clips are probably a little shorter than they really are going to be. So on the back half of a 48-minute episode, we've got, gosh, yeah, I mean, we're pushing close to 8 minutes here on the back end. And so there's some animating left to do. Okay, so a lot of animating left to do. About 16 minutes worth. So that will be all kinds of nothing but fun. But before we get into it, I'm going to do a quick review on the front half. I'm sure over the next few days I'll be coming back to this repeatedly and just kind of scanning through it and seeing if there's any stuff that's jumping out at me as being egregious. But I must say that every time I go through and review it again, I'm finding fewer and fewer things that I feel need to be tweaked. So that's the good news. Essentially the first episode is done from an animation standpoint. And again, I may still find a few things to improve, but this episode is pretty much at the point where voices and soundtrack, that's where we're at with this particular episode. So that's good news. I had mentioned the other day that I'm thinking about doing a crowdfund thing, and I'm still thinking about it. My inclination, but if anybody out there is listening and has any experience, I mean, I've done a GoFundMe one time. I don't think GoFundMe is the right thing for this. And Kickstarter is kind of an all or nothing thing where the conventional wisdom is that you really want to stop everything and really devote a month or so to social media and promoting your campaign. I don't look forward to that, because what I really prefer to do is keep chugging forward with the project. So with that in mind, it seems to me that probably Indiegogo is the place to be, because then you could do a it's basically a mid-tier type of crowdfund situation. That's not an all or nothing deal. It's kind of like, the idea would be it would be something that could be developed and grown and exist over time. Despite an initial pretty aggressive push, I would say. But you got to realize, other than doing YouTube, I'm not really, I don't really do a lot of social media, because frankly, once you've kind of been taking care of the cartoon and all the other things, other things in life that need attention, there really isn't a lot of time for just, whiling away hours on social media. So I don't have much of a presence anywhere, on Pinterest or Snapchat or Instagram, any of those. Not that I wouldn't, though. I mean, if that was appropriate, I would certainly turn some attention in that direction. So yeah, there's a few things through this section that I still might want to improve somewhat. But all in all, Oh, I love that shot. All in all, we're in pretty good shape. That looks all cartoonish, but that's because it's crazy, frenetic, whoa, kind of thing. So yeah, the more I scan through it, the less I'm finding that's really problematic. So with that in mind, I would say we're pretty safe to kind of move forward with what I'm working on today. And we're at 23:41, so that means, and by the way, my tasty beverage today is a cup of tea. Kyle made some tea. So afternoon tea is hitting the spot 2D. And so we're going to have to lose not quite a minute. So that's pretty doable. That's just an editing thing. So let's go back to the top. Basically, I had mentioned the other day a concept I have for the beginning of the show. And this is kind of what that concept is. And so I'm just going to kind of talk this through. What would happen is you would come up from black and you would sort of have this ethereal, maybe meditative music, you might say. And Asher would be the narrator. My name is Asher. They call me a wise and holy man. I don't know about all that. Wisest thing I ever did was take in a young boy and raise him as my own. Little could I realize that he would become more important than anyone could imagine, or something like that. This is something like that. I'm thinking that, so he's sitting here kind of doing the meditation thing. And then over here, you got little Mel. I just drew this morning. Mel's kind of playing with his blocks. So when he mentions the kid, we cut to the kid, and he kind of does something like this. Bloop, wee. So then it's like, uh-oh. And then if you look up here, you can see the expression on Asher has changed from this to and then I kind of like the idea that Mel, even as a toddler, did this little thing that we see later in the show where he kind of does that. So I think that'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be cool. We could have a nice little moment there in the first 30 seconds, and then the music would swell up and go into a montage that would be 30 seconds long, and then that would basically be the beginning of the show, and of course end with the logo and all the rest. So that's my plan. Why the heck not, right? And it turns out that we can get right to the inking. Nice. So I'm going to go back here, set a keyframe. My expectation would be that this will be, I think what I'll do is kind of my usual thing. I'm going to create the art assets and then cut and paste them into Tahoma, because we're going to have to animate quite a bit of stuff, possibly even a camera move. So that would be most difficult in Krita, most difficult to do. And why do we want to make our lives difficult when we can make our lives easy? Right? Right. Okay, I'm going to turn on the stabilizer and really try to do some nice, clean inking here. Clean inking in Krita. Yeah, and I didn't really take a day off yesterday, but I didn't really work on this as much as normal, and spent some time getting my Linux laptop dialed in. I actually like running Windows programs on Linux because the way the Windows emulator works which it's not an emulator actually. They just basically re-implemented the Windows APIs. So when you run Windows programs on Linux, typically they're running as native apps because they're just calling functions in the system that are re-implementations of the Windows API. If that's all Greek to you, don't feel bad. It's Greek to a lot of people. Don't really like that. That would be okay, I think. But I like Linux. I like the your Windows environment is essentially sandboxed. So it'd be like having, and not all Windows programs run perfectly under what they call WINE, W-I-N-E. It's an acronym that means, it's a recursive acronym that means WINE is not an emulator. Isn't that clever? But what they do is, there's two things they do with WINE that I think are quite awesome. One is, in a matter of minutes, like 1 minute, you can set up a whole separate sandboxed Windows environment that is like an XP environment, or maybe a 32-bit environment versus a 64-bit Windows 7 environment, whatever you want. Take your pick, Windows 8.1. You can take your choice. And again, this is not the same as running like virtual box or something where you're, or VMware where you're running an emulator. But all of your Windows applications effectively get sandboxed in your home folder. And so unlike typical Windows, if something in your system gets boogered up, it's really easy to just, you can clean house really easily. They actually implemented the Windows registry. Instead of being a binary registry, it's actually just 3 text files. And so you can easily go in and edit them by hand. Not that I've ever needed to, actually. Okay, so this is something I didn't quite figure out. I may have made an error here. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do is, let's just kind of put the old ankle in there and go like that and see if it works. I think that's going to work, actually. His feet, they look a little long. Nah, that's okay. That actually looks all right. So, okay, we're doing all right. Let's go back up here. We don't want to chimp out on the hands. My beautiful Valerie has pointed out that up until recently, my the hands I've been drawing have been less than stellar in some cases. I'm sure she's correct. And yeah, I was talking to her about the things I'm going through and fixing, and she's like, "Have you fixed the hands?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, the hands?" And she's like, "Yeah, I might want to look at some of the hands." Okay. Wow, there's nobody out there today. That's pretty weird. I do not very often get like only one concurrent user. But it could be the time of day, or it could be that I ranted too much the other day. I can't even remember what I was kind of going on about, but probably software. Maybe I just offended the whole YouTube audience is mad at me, maybe. I don't know. I hope not. I'm such a nice guy. I like it muy mucho. Well, looks pretty good. Don't usually draw Asher from a front view. But that is that. Just kind of checking here on a couple items. Now that's interesting. I'll bet you I know what's going on here. Hey, if the YouTube shows that I have one concurrent user. If you, here's the problem. Here's the problem. This live stream is unlisted. That's hilarious. I'm live streaming and no one knows it. Sorry, guys. I had a suspicion maybe something was funky with my YouTube settings. So my bad. I had the live stream set to unlisted actually. So sorry. So I'll bet you the word is getting out now. The word is getting out that Dave's live streaming. And perhaps people will come out to see what the heck's going on. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I like it. I really do. I like the way Asher's looking. Okay, so now Asher, not altogether surprisingly, has skin that is somewhat ashen. Yeah, that's not why he's named Asher, but we'll pretend it is. So I'm going to go into behind mode, Shift-Alt-Q, and hit the F key, and see if I can get away with just doing a litany of fill operations. I wonder if the fill tool is symmetrical. Nope, it's not. I didn't think it was, but hey, it never hurts to check, right? It never hurts to try. So we'll just go through and get Asher all colored in, and then we'll consider what we want to do as far as shadows. My suspicion at the moment, considering that we're going to have some fairly moody lighting on this guy, I'm thinking that I'll put the shadows on their own layer and composite them in Tahoma, give myself a little bit of flexibility on how these shadows are done for this particular shot. So, hey, Golden Slime, what's going on, buddy? Didn't do too much streaming yesterday, and today I'm working on the, I have this concept for the introduction of the show that I'm putting the assets here together for. So, needed to start out with a picture of Asher in a meditative state. So I'm thinking I'll get these pieces chopped together, and then we'll bring them all over into Tahoma and make it pretty. You know, I may even try, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I may even try, I haven't done much with like particle systems in Tahoma or OpenToonz, but for this I might try that, because I was thinking about sort of a litany of candles around him. We're sort of coming up from black because it's the introduction to the show. So you will hear this music come in, kind of this meditative, ethereal type of music. And then his voiceover comes in, which of course...
I'm the voice of Asher. Oh, I love doing his voice. He's got a very nice voice, I think, for an old man. So Asher becomes our narrator, which is more or less what I expected would happen. One never knows with these things, however.
So, yeah. So I'll be Asher. The Ashman. So, ink and paint in Krita, that's what we're doing. What I did was just blocked in pencil test fashion the stuff I'm going to need to see on the screen, which is basically this pose of Asher, and then one change in his facial expression, followed by a bunch of animation keys of Mel as a toddler. See, this is something that I really don't... I wonder if I... Let's turn the threshold up and see what happens. Let's turn the threshold to the max and see what happens. Okay, so it is being more aggressive. Okay, let's split the difference and see. Okay. I guess I've always had the threshold kind of on the low side, so I guess maybe I got spanked. Boom. Yeah, okay, cool. Save our work. Okay, so, I forgot his little garment. And what would his garment be? His garment would be kind of a grayish color, but probably on the blue side, maybe? Something like that. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And his little cap that he wears is most distinctly burgundy. Cool beans. There's Asher. Meditating. So, file, save. Okay, so as we go forward, hey, yeah, I've got a Golden Slime asks if I have a graphics tablet. Yeah, it's this one. It is the XP Pen Digital Artist 15.6. Very, very well reviewed on here on YouTube. It's pretty much been flawless, with the only caveat being that just recently I had to reinstall the driver, and because I couldn't find the original driver that came with the product, I downloaded the latest driver, and the latest driver does have it's not as good as the original driver, because for whatever reason it's not as responsive to the middle mouse button, if you will. And so that's the downside. In exchange, however, for OnePlus, which is that here in Tahoma, actually Tahoma and OpenToonz, for the last year, if I ever use the selection tool, I could make a selection with my stylus, but I couldn't actually drag anything around. I'd have to use my mouse for that. So I'd have to switch to the mouse to do this. Now the stylus works fine, and I can do everything with the stylus, which is a bigger benefit than you might think, actually, because I use the selection tool to just grab stuff and move it around quite often. I mean, that's pretty much how I do animation in Krita, really. So now what we have here is, if we look at the pencil test, I guess what I should do is probably maybe crank up the old contrast here just a bit. Just on this little sequence, so I'm hitting Control F. Okay, so basically, as I say, he's meditating, so this is what we'll see. So that was pretty easy to do. The way I did it was I just used the liquify tool in grow mode. Okay, so you hit the A key, and then you go into liquify, and you hit this little guy right here, and then just really carefully, I guess I want to go to here, really carefully just a little bit. Just a little bit. And then as I recall, I then made it just a bit bigger so that you started to see his chin get pushed up almost a little bit. We'll see. Hopefully I'll nail it here on the second try. I could always ink and paint it, you know, but if I can use the same tool for the ink and paint as I did with pencil test, then, you know, it's one less thing. Okay, that's not too bad actually. Yeah, not too bad. I can live with that. How's it going, Yvette? Now, the fact of the matter is I probably feel like it's a little strong. I think what I'm going to do is, let me see. We've got this. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to leave it. We've really basically got one key too many probably because we do have a change from this one to this one. So probably we'll just be like this. That's fine. In fact, what I'll probably do is when when Mel factors into this, maybe we'll go ahead and have him take a deeper breath when he has his reaction. So this will make a little more sense here in a moment. Let me jump through and I'm just going to run the hitting Control F to just apply that contrast increase to all the keyframes. Yeah, so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here's Mel as a toddler. The only time we see him as a toddler is in this little intro segment. And what he does is, and I just drew them all on the same frame. Probably I'll put them in different layers and we'll have a little closer shot of Mel and then we'll pull out to reveal Asher. But I like what Mel does here. He just kind of smacks the blocks and then he realizes something's not necessarily right. And then he does the same thing that Mel does later when he's you know, a teenager. That expression right there we saw later in the show when he's, you know, 15, 16 years old. So I think it's kind of a cool thing. We're sort of teasing that. Good and me. Everything's cool here. Everything's good. Everything is good. All is good. Alright, so let's call this layer Asher. And we might as well put Mel on his own layer. Methinks. And so here we'll just hit the insert key to insert a keyframe. And we need to switch back to our, actually I think I used my pen for this. And I do have my stabilizer on, so. Alright, so what I'm going to want to do, actually let's do this while I'm thinking about it. Let's put in Asher's second keyframe. So we'll put the drawing actually on the top so we can see that. Okay, so all I need to do is change his expression here. Like that. So, Asher, and I am assuming, let me think about this. When he goes to that expression, he will take the deeper breath. So what's really going to happen here is it's going to be like this. And then when Mel knocks the blocks over and obviously interrupts his meditation, it'll be like, whoop. He'll breathe in a little deeper, and then we'll see the expression. So therefore, it actually makes sense to just add it to this layer. Okie dokie. So what I'm going to do, hit the B key. Oh, sorry. Actually, I'm going to hit the G key and the E key, so I'm in erase mode. And all I need to do is change that right there. Okay. Now I'm switching out of erase mode. Now one could argue that perhaps a reaction shot where the eye gets bigger and then settles into the expression would be good, but I kind of tried that and it looked worse to me. It just didn't feel so good. So I decided, you know what? We're going to keep it simple, Sherlock. Okay, G key, and we're just going to turn down from white a little bit, and then Shift Alt Q, and now we should be able to hit. Here we go. Nice. We'll worry about the shadows later. That's not a big deal. So, okay. So we pretty much have Asher good to go for that shot. Let's go back to Mel. So we were going to start him here. And usually I like to do a little analysis first. Yeah, you can see what I did. I actually drew the sketch and then just, like I was showing in Tahoma, where I used the selection tool, just grab a piece of it that you want to animate and then move it around. And then just paint to patch the hole. Basically, the most of the stack of blocks and from the chest down never changes. So just kind of keeping that in mind, not necessarily gonna get into doing a bunch of layers at this point because of that, but I want to kind of be aware of what is going to be changing or not changing. So I didn't like that last bit of the stroke. I didn't like it. Well, it's the old working from the known to the unknown thing. I need to do the stuff I'm sure of. And this, he'd be about the age of my grandson in this little clip. As a matter of fact, little Brighton. Okay. And we'll just give him little fat little legs and some kind of diaper situation. Okay. So now the question is, do we want to actually break this little fella into two pieces? Let's not decide yet. I think not, actually. I think I'm going to just keep it on one layer. Yeah. Yeah. I'm the insane animator who likes to keep things all flat and on one layer. And people wonder why. That's too big. Now, that can happen when you zoom in, and obviously what we have here is a sketch that's not very crisp. So why don't we jump into the background? Let's just rectify that right now. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my pencil and just... this has got me in trouble more than once. So let's just take half a second and figure out what we're trying to draw here before I... Dirt says H, which I assume means hello. That's better. That's better. Alright, GE. As long as we're here. Just kind of clean that up too, because it's fun to do so. Okay, turn the background down, go back to Mel, and hit the Q key. Boop. A little erase mode there. Okay. Boo-doo-boo-doo-doo-doo. Okay. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Okay. It's really okay. Little ears. Oh, the cute little ears are so cute. Uh-oh. Kind of botched that one, didn't I? Oh, yeah. He still had his headband, even when he was a little stinker. Yep, he did. Yeah, I don't know how long I'll be live streaming today. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. Playing it by ear, people. Playing it by ear. Okay. That feels pretty good. Boop. There's little toddler Melchizedek. Oh yeah. We gotta draw these blocks. Oh yeah. With a... I'm gonna draw this one first. I'm deliberately exaggerating the... You know, I'm not drawing them squared off, I guess you'd say. I am allowing them to have a slightly caricatured shape, as one does often find in cartoons of various kinds. Okay, and there's going to be one block on the top like that. I don't know if that top one should be that exaggerated, though. I'm thinking not. There we go. Groovy cool. Groovy, man. Okay. So now, what the heck happens? We in solo mode? No, we've got this background pretty quiet, though. Okay. Now, what I did before, I think I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna do all the cut and paste, and I'm gonna go ahead and ink this somewhat properly. Oopsie. I'm so silly. I just deleted his arm on the wrong layer. I hate when that happens. Okay. DE. Let me see. Let me hit solo and let me look at this. Okay. So, well, actually, strike this. This is where this is actually a good example of why I do ink and paint as I go. Because if I'm gonna grab his head and animate it, why redo the ink and paint? Not that it matters much. I mean, it only takes a second to put the paint in there, obviously, so. Well, we'll just do it this way. We'll do it this way. Okay. So then we're going to go G, E, B, E. Okay, cool. And then we kind of lost his shoulder, didn't we? Boom. I like it. I like it muy mucho. Now I gotta cut out that piece, obviously. Okay. Now we're not doing the cartoon convention of 3 fingers. We are doing 4 fingers. Need his thumb to be a little fatter. So as you can see, when I sketched this, I had a missing finger. So I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't like that at all. In fact, let me see what his hand does. Oh, I see. That's just a tween, really. Okay, so we'll leave that as it is. So his hand goes up. Okay. So, yeah. I guess since we're doing it this way, I'll keep doing it this way. Meaning, rather than leveraging my assets, I'm going to go ahead and just redraw the stuff. That's fine. Sometimes I do it this way, sometimes I do it that way. It's Baby Mel. Yeah, it's Baby Mel. Welcome to the party, Darren. Hope all's well in jolly old England. Yeah, I had this concept for the introduction of the show where Asher's narrating, and so he's meditating. I don't know if you saw it, but I'll do the quick recap thing. So Asher's just kind of meditating, and then when he mentions Mel, we'll cut to Mel and show this, and then when he goes like, then he gives him that silly look. So kind of knows he's in trouble, and which kind of states the case to me. It's like we're kind of setting the pattern for this sort of I don't know what the word for it is, but the nature of the relationship, between Mel and Asher. I think this is kind of a cool idea to sort of set that pattern right in the first 30 seconds of the show. Plus, it's nice to see Mel actually in the first 30 seconds of the show, even though the next time we see him, he's obviously quite a lot older. Alright, so let me just kind of, as always, working from the known to the unknown. What do I see? I see that. I see that. Yeah. Not quite. Not quite. It looks a little too adult-ish. Gotta keep it loose. Loose and cartoony. And we go. Keep going. Let's see. Oh, I see. I see what's going on. So the only thing that actually changes here is the block. So, okie dokie. We'll just roll with that. I must say, though, one thing that bugs me a little bit is I feel like the characterization here ooh, no contest. Well, great example of why animating things as opposed to redrawing them is sometimes not the greatest idea. Because frankly, I way prefer the sketch. Ha! Like by a mile. So, I wish I could, I wonder if I can control up or something. Maybe it's page up, page down. Ah, but why is it toggling between? That's weird. Why is it? What are the odds? I'm hitting page up and page down, and it'll toggle keyframe there. That is strange, most strange, and a little bit annoying. Okay, well, we'll take it out of solo mode. Let me just see here. I tell ya, it's time to be ruthless. Ruthless, I say. Okay, well, that's a little harsh, covering him up with a bunch of black. That's what I meant to do. Let me see this one. Okay, so that's the same drawing. Okay. Yeah, we got to get this drawing right. Absolutely. I don't know what Kyle's laughing about over there. He's just going crazy. Jolly England is pretty spiffing. I'm not so spiffing at the minute. I'm just getting over a small bout of COVID. Ah, you got it, did you? Glad to see how back streaming. You'd mentioned before the idea. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did. I mentioned that in a previous video that I was probably going to pursue this idea. And indeed, here I am doing it. So, yeah, there is a risk you run of losing the sparkle that I frankly don't think it happens that often, but it definitely happens. Where, you know, the pencil test has a certain charm to it that is easy to lose. Didn't quite nail that, did I? There we go. That's so much closer to what I was feeling. Yeah, that's the expression. That's better. Whew, dodged a bullet, didn't we? We definitely did. Boo-doop, boo-doop, ba-doop-doop-doo-doo-doo. Well, I'm glad that COVID didn't harm you too much, apparently. Not that you'd necessarily tell the whole world if it did, I suppose. But, yeah, the problem with COVID-19 from the standpoint of people that don't have, you know, comorbidities, as we like to say, the problem is that it can really mess with your heart and some other organs in ways that we don't quite know yet what the long-term implications might be. So if you can avoid it, or at least keep it minimally offensive to your system, let's say, that would be a good thing. So you can see, look at that. Yeah, that is most unfortunate, because that second characterization is, it's crazy because it actually works, because these are all the same. This is the same drawing, just rotated. But you know, like I said, when I did the sketch, I drew them repeatedly, and it's just amazing how this works and the other one doesn't. So, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do to make this as simple as possible. I'm just going to erase this, because there's no reason to redraw it or copy it or mess around, because it only needs to be drawn the one time anyway. So, and once we get to here, let's see. I guess what we could do then is take this, actually strike, well, yeah, and we'll re-ink him here, since he's got that different expression. So it really doesn't make sense to ink a bunch of stuff that you're going to wind up not using anyway, because the stuff just repeats. Let's re-ink his face, because that's the only thing we're going to need from this particular frame. So, just so in fact, the blocks situation is different as well, because the top block isn't there, so we might as well just take those guys out. Get them out of there, I say. Get them out of there. No, there's something to be said for, when in doubt, redraw it. Nope. That's better. Symptoms since Wednesday, so fingers crossed. That's all I have. That's good. Yeah, one thing that, if you haven't really had the cough too much, well, I'll just say this: if you have had the cough, it can be helpful to get a nebulizer, which you can pick one up on, if you don't have one. Pick one up probably on Amazon or something for, I don't know, probably $20-30. But a nebulizer with colloidal silver can be quite helpful for anything respiratory, because colloidal silver is quite toxic to pathogens. Kills bacteria, and I'm not sure about viruses, but I believe it's actually pretty harmful to viruses as well. And well, and plus, besides, when people get sick, they tend to, you know, if they get a bacterial infection, it's usually a side effect of first having the virus, right? So, but when I was sick last February, so I haven't been sick in a year, and when I was sick last February, I had most of the symptoms of COVID-19. Now, I didn't get tested. I don't even know if they had a test at that point ready to go. It was really just kind of becoming news. But our symptoms were definitely, you know, we had the dry cough and all the rest. And I was using the nebulizer multiple times a day with colloidal silver. Yeah, there'll be, as far as the crowdfund pitch, it'll be, you know, you can look at the crowdfund that was done for the other properties that we've talked about before. Blossom Detective Homes is one. I can't remember what the other two are called. I basically found two, and there's typical things you want to do, you know, a little introductory, very short introductory pitch, which I think possibly would leverage the shot that I'm working on right now. Actually run the introductory segment, and then for 30 seconds, and then when it transitions to the second 30 seconds where you're actually seeing the show introduction, ending obviously with the logo, I would have some talk over top of that. That's what I'm thinking. And then, you know, a little segment where it's kind of like, you know, what's the story? What is the sort of epic thing that we're all gonna enjoy here? What is it we're creating? You know, who am I? You know, what am I about? A little bit of that is probably important. Whoops. I don't know. I'm actually leaning against saying too much about my experience as a filmmaker, other than maybe mentioning it in passing. I don't know if that's really the point. I think the point here has to do with you know, a cartoon that's a cool and fun story with fun characters that people can get on board with. I think that's more important than much at all about me. I mean, I need to kind of let people know who I am and what I'm trying to do, obviously. Where did my selection go? That was a little strange. I couldn't see my selection. Alright, Mel, dude, your hair. We need to fix your hair. So step one is going to be to, yeah, we got to billow that out a little bit more. So some behind the scenes stuff, which obviously there's oodles and oodles of content here on YouTube that would qualify. I think character model sheets would be good. Maybe a couple sample background paintings. I mean, that's certainly part of my skill set that's come a long ways in the last year. You know, I mean, I suppose my story is that it's not exactly what happened, but you know, you sort of you get COVID-19 hitting the world, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna take a year and figure out how to make a cartoon. Which is kind of what I did. Okay, I'll buy it. I'll buy it. Okay, so here, truth of the matter is, probably the getting the hair situation is again redundant. It's good practice though. What I'm doing right now, just trying to match up nicely, is good practice, but it's probably unnecessary because the truth of the matter is I'll just be cutting and pasting. I mean, I'll be actually using the prior drawing almost, you know, other than just his facial expressions. So it just doesn't make sense to introduce chatter in your animation for no good reason. So I think I'm going to just leave it at that. This is all I needed anyway for this shot. Sounds great for the pitch. And doing it well. And doing what well? Maybe I said something earlier. I don't remember what I said. I guess I mentioned background paintings. Okay, so why don't we do this? We'll put the blocks on their own layer. What the heck? I'm feeling bold. So I'm going to go Control X, Control V. That's all it takes. Now the blocks are on their own layer, and therefore I can get rid of that keyframe right there. And then that way on the Mel layer I can just go, well, I don't want to just go delete because it looks to me like I'd be taking off, hit one of his fingers. But delete, delete, delete. Okay, so now on the mel layer, the blocks are actually gone, and you're just seeing them bleed over from this keyframe. Cool. And now what we can do is just put the blocks, do the block animation. Easy peasy. Rather than really having to spend, you know, 6 weeks probably not making a ton of progress on this, but actually just putting all my energies into promoting it, I really kind of feel like the middle ground for me from a crowdfunding standpoint would be kind of like the idea of, I mean, I really prefer to let the crowdfunding platform allow it to grow, you know, people's knowledge of it or whatever, organically, so that I just keep moving forward and it can just develop as a thing that, you know, people increasingly become aware of, and but keep making progress on it. Now that's not really probably the most conventional, or maybe not the most recommended approach, but it is kind of what I'm thinking. Okay, so we got that expression in there. The blocks are good to go. File, save. So hence you want a crowdfunding model that A, has good marketing support. I'd rather, at this point, for the most part, I'd probably rather pay a certain amount to get the word out than to have to devote too much of my time to it directly. Let's see. I'm gonna, and Krita, you stinker. You are a stinker. There we go. I suppose I'm to a degree I'm remiss to say too much more about it because my ideas about it are still being formulated. You know, I certainly don't want to sound like I know what I'm talking about, because I don't. I mean, when it comes to crowdfunding, the only thing I know is, you know, generally you want to look at it as, you know, this is kind of my job now for a while, right? And I whoops, Control Shift A. There we go. And of course you're going to do that to a degree. And, you know, as you gain enthusiasm and kick the thing off, of course you're going to want to get the word out. You know, so it's all good. I guess the question is this. And I see another thing that came up as Valerie and I were talking about this is the idea that, you know, I've said this before, this is not supposed to be possible. Certainly not in like 3 months. From a cost or a time standpoint, it's just not supposed to be possible for one guy to do a whole episode. Now, I don't actually think it's that lofty of an accomplishment. Once you figure out your workflow and you kind of know what you're doing, it's not like I have to work on this for 10 hours a day, you know. So I don't see it as that lofty of an accomplishment personally. And what I guess what I'm trying to say is that the important thing is the story, the characters, not the fact that one guy's doing it all by himself. Especially because depending on see, this is what I'm thinking about, the stretch goals and whatnot. At a certain level, I would very much like to hire a team. You know, I really would. There's certainly no reason not to consider that. I mean, if I had, my estimation would be 6 to 10 people. And I think I would need 2 writers, probably 2 writers, which I already know Yvette. I know. Well, see, Blipton, that's right. You know, I've thought about that too. It's like if you're gonna have this thing that just unfolds organically in terms of the world saying, "Hey, what you're doing's cool. Let's support it." Why don't I just do a Patreon right now? And that's a totally legitimate question. And so I'm thinking about that. Um, I'm thinking about it. Okay, is this a tween? I don't get what his expression is there. That seems wrong to me. Oh, that's right. I switched it from being like a scared expression or whatever because I wanted him to switch to this. Right. Okay, that's consistent with Mel.
Things are starting to make sense around here.
I mean, do you guys, um, I mean, Darren, obviously you have a Patreon, so I don't know if you want to talk publicly about how that's helped you, right? I mean, that's kind of personal information. So, um, I would think it would certainly be helpful. I mean, your content is, frankly, I mean, in the marketplace, at the end of the day, the market value of my content is much greater than educational content, I would say. Um, but in the short run, like presently, and especially as it relates to your YouTube channel, your content's far more valuable than mine. I mean, your content's actually useful to people. I don't know how useful this. Me sitting here talking and doodling, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Once there's a show and it's cool, then I'm like, that's cool. You know, that's what I've been working towards. And there is a part of me that, um, okay, so you guys can actually weigh in on this if you want to, because in the modern age of social media, what I'm about to say is probably an old-fashioned way to look at it. Okay. Um, but my thinking is, ultimately, I almost want to produce cartoons anonymously. I almost don't want to be. I don't want it to be about, one guy did this. To me, that's not the selling point, especially if it sucks. What does it matter if somebody did something really cheap or really fast or really all by themselves if it's not, a real pleasure to watch, right? I think that I think that maybe the expression should be more like this, a little more pensive expression. Um, and believe me, I am thinking about this in terms of a career. I mean, I'm thinking about this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I'm going to make cartoons. I mean, I don't know for sure that that's true, but I'm pretty sure it's true. And usually when I'm a guy who, when I get to the point where I'm as certain as I am about this, it usually winds up being what happens, just because I kind of know myself. And well, yeah, so Blifton's correct. So in fact, the funny thing about it is, let me just say this. I'll give you guys kind of full disclosure here. One of the things I was agonizing about a little bit was the problem of the story, because here you have this epic story. There's a really big, really inspiring, really cool story here that you guys don't know about, that I'm not going to talk about in detail why it's cool. I know why it's cool. That's something I'm not going to reveal because that's a surprise for the audience to discover when the time comes. Okay. But the thing about that I was thinking about in regard to crowdfunding is that, well, if we got contributions to a certain level, the truth is that the epic story could be told in 4 episodes. I think I mentioned that the other day. Because the original concept of the show was to hide the epic story woven throughout 12 episodes, right? And I gotta check, something's wrong here. Oh no, I guess it's not. And Val made a really good point today, which is that the situations that get resolved in the quote unquote epic story that is so cool actually leave you in a situation. The problem I had is, let's say we don't get that much support, but we can do 4 episodes, right? Well, I could do the whole epic story in 4 episodes. It just wouldn't be woven throughout these individual standalone episodes that are each sort of a individual story with a concurrent thread of the greater story running through it. I hope that makes sense for you guys. Okay, so I'm thinking about that. And Val's like, well, if you resolve the epic in 4 episodes, that doesn't actually solve the whole problem. It doesn't solve Mel's problem. In a sense, it actually gets him to the place where he now just understands the real problem that he has to solve. Now, I know that's very vague and hard to, it may not make a tremendous amount of sense because I have to speak in riddles here because I don't want to give away the really key points that drive the reason I call it epic is because it is epic. Okay, I think that worked. It's kind of funny because his baby face actually looks a little bit, probably too much like older Mel. But that's easy to solve in case you guys don't know. Generally speaking, if you take a mouth and just raise it up, it makes people look younger. So I'm going to raise that up, and I'm also going to do the same thing with his nose. The problem, too, is his chin is really not quite right. So anyway, the problem, so she solved the problem. She pointed out to me that even if you got the key bones of the epic story told in 4 episodes, right out of the gate, you just kind of tell that key story that was originally the driver of the 12 episodes, right? Even if you did that, you still have the makings of an ongoing show that works just fine. And I just hadn't seen it that way. I didn't see it the way she saw it, and when she pointed that out to me, I was like, geez, that makes perfect sense. Hence, we don't really have to. What we can do is we can keep it simple in the sense that you say, well, I mean, however much we raise just keeps funding new episodes. No big deal. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but now I don't like this part of his chin. This might be one of those cases where I'm blabbing too much, and because of that I'm not necessarily doing the greatest job. So let me look at the messages here and see. I don't think Patreon would be, you don't think Patreon would be useful. I think the crowdfund would be best, providing the one guy did this is a huge sales point at the start. Okay. I appreciate your opinion. I think Val's opinion was different for this reason, and it's a legitimate reason. She knows me, and she knows my ego, and I think she understands that for me personally, focusing too much on that is probably not the greatest thing, because it is a bit of an ego trip, which I need ego trips like I need a hole in the head, right? All of us do. So I totally can see her point on that. And that's why I think in the long run I'd prefer to create cartoons anonymously. It's about the cartoon. It's not about the person that did the animation or even wrote it or anything, really. That would be my perfect world. In my perfect world, I would just be working on this stuff. I would have probably, again, in my perfect world, I probably would have a team. of 6 or 8 people. They would be spread all over the world, just like you guys. And I'll answer your question here in a second, Varia. Um, and we would probably have multiple shows in production, but maybe just one at a time. But see, with a team like that, we could probably crank out a whole season in 6 months. You know, 6 months or even a year. Even if you do it in a year, that's still pretty respectable to knock out. I'm calling a season 12 episodes. I mean, you can think of a season as 24 episodes too. It just depends on the show, but the more you have to do, the more people you need, I suppose. So anyway, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so Varia does the story comes to you, or are you having a hard time moving on with it? The the core story that drives the show, I already have figured out. So the idea from the beginning was to tell that story, which could be told in 4 episodes, but spread that story through 12 episodes, and then each of those 12 episodes is a standalone story. So I think of Avatar: The Last Airbender as being a good example of that type of storytelling. Each episode works is an entertaining little story where they come into some town and they meet some people and they run into a problem and they solve the problem. You know? So every episode stands alone, but the ongoing problem of being pursued by either Prince Zuko or Azula or whoever is continually being advanced. That story is also continually developing, so that within 4 years they were able to wrap up the bigger story. So that's what I was thinking, is I'm spreading the bigger story throughout a dozen smaller stories. We wouldn't have to do it that way, though. We could tell the big story in 4 episodes, and that would work just fine as a setup for an ongoing. In other words, the story isn't over once these key story points are resolved. I hope that makes sense. This is probably boring to you guys, because obviously my channel's not really about writing, but so I like it. I like it. I'm liking what I see. So therefore, let's turn the background off so we can see what our assets are that we're going to be yanking into Tahoma. Now, we do need to deal with shadows for sure, but I don't think we need to deal with shadows yet. In fact, I have no issue with Patreon, Blipton. I just don't think it would raise enough money compared to a crowdfund. Well, yeah, I mean, with a crowdfund, we're looking for, I don't know what the number is, but I'm looking for somewhere between, on the brutally low end, about $24,000, and more like probably closer to 60, for an episode. So, and those numbers are still very modest numbers compared to what it would cost to, go out and have someone develop and produce a show like this. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable saying stylistically and quality-wise, much of it is pretty comparable to a lot of the stuff you see on TV or in the anime, and I know the writing will be. I'm very confident in the writing. Just because I've been around the block, plenty of times with feature films. So, the only real wild card with this project, it isn't the writing, it's not the editing, it's not the music, it's literally the animation. That's the thing I've never done before. Everything else I've done many times. So, but the animation part, it's like, can I do this? I kind of thought I could, because I've always been a cartoonist. Now why, why have I got this in solo mode? Okay. I was wondering why I wasn't seeing Mel. There we go. Okay. Let's try a fill tool in behind mode. Come on. Oh, really? That's what you're going to do? Now, I've set my threshold higher. But why in the... Oh, there we go. There's your leak right there. Curse you, little leak. Yep, look at that. Look at that. That's looking pretty good. Oh, that's the wrong color there, Jack. Yeah. Okay, I have to say, setting the threshold higher has proven to be a big win, too. Because I am having much fewer problems with the fill ops than I was before. So, you know, I don't mean to fixate too much on this. It's just that in the long run, this is very much what I intend to be doing. I mean, there are pathways already in place for distribution, so I'm pretty confident any way I slice it, the show's going to get out there and do okay. But it just seems kind of stupid not to. You know, at this point, I've taken so far the risk of just doing all this on my own for a year, more than a year, really. So, you know, does it make sense to maybe let people, you know, be part of it? I guess it's kind of a big aspect of what the whole crowdfunding thing is, right? You know, you're part of something that's cool. Okay, Darren says, just my opinion, I have no experience with either of them. Well, you're doing Patreon, though. Oh, you're not? I thought you were. I'm sorry. Why did I think you were on Patreon? I really thought you were. Sorry about that. I mentioned it because I'd heard you say a few times yes. Yeah, I totally thought you were on Patreon. You should be on Patreon. I think you should be on Patreon. Maybe not. I don't know. Guess we'll give a little bit of a blue tint, just like Asher, to his skivvies. Yeah, I mean, Patreon is... I mean, I've kind of said this before here, but I just haven't felt comfortable asking people to give me money until I was really, really sure that this was going to be something that was up to scratch, so to speak, you know. Okay, I think we got the color whipped into shape. Now what do we do with Mel? Let's find out. Well, okay, it looks like we get to color him twice. Okay, color him twice then. So let's go. Or 3 times. Okay, yeah, and then we get back into just the head. Okay, so here, probably. Yep, looking good. We'll just put that like that. We don't need to worry about his arm. This is a 1-frame tween. And it's all good. It's all good. All right. Now here, we don't want to go too far with this. Other than his hair, I suppose. Other than the hair. Fill tool. G key. Fill tool. In behind mode.
Very, very important. Very important.
Okay. I think my rationale here... Yes. My rationale here was that the hair was coming from this other. So, in truth, this probably should... I actually should just fix this right now, thusly. This stuff does not even belong in here. It's just a face replacement. That's good. That's good. Okay, cool. Is crowdfund like donation? Yeah, I mean, normally what there's rewards. Okay, you know, so what are rewards for something like this? Well, the first tier rewards are typically going to be maybe early access to, you know, somebody who gives you $10 or $20, let's say. They might get early access to the released episodes. At the $50 level, you're seeing things like an art book like a published book of, you know, the art of salt and light would be what this is. Um, Somewhere in between there, maybe at the $20-$30 level, sometimes people will do an actual Blu-ray of the property, you know, an exclusive Blu-ray that you get, because it's a bit of a keepsake. You know, you get a hard copy of it that you can hang on to, um, even though people don't really watch Blu-rays anymore too much. Um, it's still, you know, a bit of a cool thing. At higher levels, one thing I did on my feature film, Heal by Grace 2, when we crowdfunded that, we only raised a couple $1,000. Um, but the good thing about it was, though, that one of the people who, oopsie poo, one of the people that supported me on that wound up what are we doing here? We want to sample that thing. The headband. Okay, now, did I just, like, forget to draw the headband here, or what? Or is this just a... Oh, this is just a face change. Yeah, it makes sense. So, again, I really don't need the hair here. Same situation. Same situation here. Yeah, and I don't think his ears should be changing shape either. His chin... I'm going to leave that in there because, frankly, I think I nailed that shape better. But let's just keep moving forward. G key, I guess we need the skin tone. And before we go too much further, we should get his eyes in there. So what I was going to say, and I never finished my sentence, was on that crowdfund, which again, I was nowhere near as successful as I feel this would have to be. People would get an associate producer credit, so they would actually be credited in the movie. So there's, you know, 20 or 30 associate producers listed in the credits of the film, and that's a cool thing. I mean, that's forever. You know, that's definitely a cool thing. And the one guy that gave a lot wound up being actually got an executive producer credit, which is what an executive producer is. I don't know if you guys know that, but in a movie, if someone's listed as an executive producer, that means that they put up the money, actually, is what that means. Whereas a producer, this is a mistake. Hang on. That's a mistake. Sorry. This should be like something like that. Yeah. The producer on a movie, Barry says, do you think the coloring process is better in Krita than OpenToonz? Well, for the most part, yes. For the most part, yes. It's not a simple yes or no answer, really. They both have their advantages, but I like working in Krita better. And, whoops. And it's certainly a lot more flexible in terms of what I can do with color in Krita. You know, I like the process better myself. Other people may feel differently, for sure. Boom, boom. Okay. And there we go. Oh, I forgot the headband. Isn't that just like me to do that? Can you believe that, you guys? Yeah, the coloring process in Krita is far more flexible. If you like to, you know, for doing things like shadows and, but at the same time, you know, if you have a little bit of skill with the you know, the node editor, as it were, or the schematic in Tahoma, I mean, you can do all kinds of very cool looking effects, you know, body lights and things like that that look really cool. So they're both super, super capable tools, and they're Krita is stronger on the paint side, and obviously Tahoma is stronger on the animation side. So for me, the two together is a great combination. That's just my opinion. G key. Okay. All right. I would put it this way. If you like digital painting, or you're an artist more than you're an animator, let's say, um, you're gonna like Krita a lot better. You're gonna run into more limitations with Tahoma, definitely. But can you get the job done in Tahoma? Yeah, you can. In fact, I mean, well, actually, this sequence is a great example. This stuff, I mean, here you go. This was done all in Tahoma, and then I actually brought it back into Krita for some touch-up. And then this was done in Krita, and then cut and pasted into Tahoma for secondary animation. So you can't even really tell the difference. So at the end of the day, as far as what a cartoon actually needs, it almost doesn't make a difference. You can get the job done with Tahoma or Krita. But I would say that a person who really wants to do what I'm doing, where you do everything, I would think it would be well advised to learn both programs, because your painting is much stronger in Krita and your animating is much stronger in Tahoma. So, oh, come on. Come on. I want to isolate that layer. Where did my leak happen? And I give that advice, you know, kind of carefully, because I know people are, hey Ashnan, I know that people are exploring. They're looking at software. There's a lot of fanboys for a lot of different software out there that are going to tell you this software is great for this and this software is great for that. And I get people all the time constantly asking me why I'm using Krita and not Blender. Okay? But at the end of the day, the work you do with your tools is much more important than the tools themselves. And ultimately, you know, if I had to do it all in Krita, I could. And there's a lot of shots that have been done exclusively in Krita. In fact, some of the cooler stuff, honestly, in the back half of the show, yeah, okay, we'll save that, that's fine. But some of the cool stuff in the back half of the show, which was done early in the process, like, this stuff was done in Tahoma because I had the looping animation of the fire. But like this shot, for example, this was done completely in Krita. Just frame by frame animation. All the camera moves and everything, I just baked them in by scaling up the layers. So would it have been a little easier in OpenToonz or Tahoma? Yes. Definitely it would have been easier. To some degree, I've tortured myself by trying to do things in just Tahoma or just Krita, just to see if I could, you know. Because as I said, I've spent a year figuring out what my workflow is. It's not something that's come lightly. Now here, you have some shots that look really great that were done completely in OpenToonz. No Krita at all. Even the background painting was done in OpenToonz. This was too. I can tell by the brushwork that it was done in OpenToonz. That's 100% OpenToonz right there. So, you know, Tahoma, OpenToonz, same thing. So at the end of the day, probably most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference, you know, between the stuff that was done in one program or the other. So here, what I need to do is sample this color, okay, and then this stuff can all be deleted. We don't need any of this in here because this is all going to repeat over the subsequent frames. And this is the only thing that changes, so there we go. Oops, we don't want to be in erase mode, silly. And so the reason I say my advice is, you know, given very carefully is that if you're a serious artist who really wants to do, maybe do animation, or especially if you want to do something like I'm doing, where you're really doing most of it by yourself, or with a very small team, then having strong skills with both Krita and Tahoma has proven for me to be really, really a good 1-2 combination. They work really well together. Now that we have cut and paste, obviously. I mean, it wasn't that hard before to just you know, you save a file to disk and then load it into the other program. Obviously, you can do that. And I still do that sometimes if I want to bring a whole image sequence into Tahoma. But anyway, the painting in alpha and the paint behind option is great in Krita. Yeah, and to a degree, I mean, like, the My Paint brushes in Tahoma do allow you to do alpha lock. So I don't know if I'm sure, Darren, you probably know this, but one thing that you can do in Tahoma with the My Paint brushes only, not the native Tahoma brushes, but the My Paint brushes, you could, for example, oh, I'm sorry, I need to hit the B key. Okay, so I've got this shape, and then I'll hit the fill tool and just fill it. Okay, so if I wanted to put some stripes on the ball, I could hit lock alpha, and I can do this. So that's definitely quite helpful. It's not like the end all, it's not like the most important thing ever, but it definitely is a helpful thing with the raster levels in Tahoma if you're wanting to take a simple character and add maybe some decorations to clothing or something of that nature. Okay, so have you used motion capture in Blender? It makes 3D animation much easier. Mikhail, what I have done, I have not used motion capture data directly specifically. What I have done is, for example, there was a 3D CGI animated cartoon concept that never got produced really, but that I was working on many years ago, early Blender days. This is like Blender 2.28 or something, 2.3 era. So we're talking around the year probably 2002. What we did was we set up 2 cameras at 90 degrees, so that we could act things out. And then what we did was we created an armature rig in Blender that had a very strict naming convention. And what we found was that if we loaded the background movies in Blender, so you're looking in Blender, you're looking at the front view and the right view. Okay, so you're looking at the side and the front of the film. And then you size the background image in Blender so that they're the same height, you know, everything's the same size. What I found was you could set up an armature rig in Blender, and if you set a keyframe about once a second to match to, you know, you're doing hand tooling here of the matching, but if you only set a keyframe about every second or so, and sometimes even less, it did a remarkably good job of matching live action motion. And the cool thing is with Blender, we did the same thing with Hash Animation Master. The cool thing was that by having a standardized naming convention on the rig, we could take that rig and by changing the bone sizes, apply it to completely different characters. So one person could do all the acting, And it would work for all the different characters. You just used a different version of the bone rig where the bones were resized to match that character. So, and that was essentially um, animating bug characters. That was in the era of A Bug's Life and ants, you know, that type of thing. And so we were kind of doing a bug thing. As I say, we never got to production with it. I think we got sidetracked with live action. Um, you know, we were doing corporate video and different things like that that kind of took a lot of time. You know, and making money. So, but we did that, and so as far as bringing external motion capture data into Blender, never. I haven't done it, and I'm sure for some situations it can help, but I haven't done that myself. Okay, all the pieces are here. Frankly, I guess we probably should deal with the shadows. But this is a little sticky situation because frankly, the lighting on this shot's going to be kind of delicate because I'm seeing. Let me just fiddle with this for a minute. Because oops, that's not the color I wanted. Silly goose. I just wanted that to be black. Okay, so the feeling of this shot is something of. Let me see. I'm gonna take. Let me take these guys and put them in a group so we can add a layer over the top. So we're gonna have to have shadows that are probably pretty aggressive. I don't think we're going to have to animate them much, but so I'm going to hit the G key and let's alpha lack this layer. So I'm specifically, I often bake the shadows into my characters. There's a time for that and there's a time for not doing that, and this would be a case where you probably don't want to do that because number one, it's a strong lighting situation. And number two, I'm probably going to have multiple layers of shadows. And number three, I'm going to want to drag them all into Tahoma, probably. So let's get the... So now what I'm doing is I'm just experimenting with the look that I'm trying to get for this shot. Because I don't really... I mean, I've got some of it in my head and some of it I don't. And as I always say here, you guys, I always say go from the known to the unknown. So I'm going to take what I'm sure of, and hopefully that will reveal some of the things, some of the answers that I'm not sure of, you know. That usually works pretty well in a lot of people make is they become like with story writing or storytelling is they do have something very clear in their mind, but but the problem is it only works in isolation, and once they go ahead and start developing it into a bigger story, it turns out that initial scene or situation that was so clear in your mind actually either doesn't help or even harms the story, that the better story that you've sort of come up with, you know. And you know, and it's painful then, you know, because now you have to, that's what they call kill your darlings, you know. You have to actually take your original idea and throw it out because you realize that. But this is the way all stories, certainly all animated cartoons, go through this process where you wind up having to chuck, you know, some or even in many cases most of your original ideas, but those original ideas got you to the idea that was good, you know. So okay, unfortunately, yep, we are unfortunately going to have to keyframe this. And I was hoping I wouldn't have to, but by gum and by golly, it's gonna have to be. So I'm gonna go in grow mode. and just do the same thing I did before. Probably there. We should probably take a little bit of this and drag that up a bit. Little up and whoops, that's too much. Little grow. There's some things that are going to have to be fixed. Clearly. Okay, let's just see. Yeah, that last key did not work. Up to there, other than this little hiccup on his right leg, which I guess was there from the start. Figures, that's so me. Alright, G key. Okay. And this one, let's go ahead and liquefy. Alright, that might have done the trick actually. What the heck am I seeing there? Yeah, that's yeah, that's true. Yeah, YS Books. She has definitely been doing a lot of interesting stuff in Blender with mocap and whatnot. So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Yvette. Actually, I'd forgotten. Well, I'd forgotten you were here, truthfully. So, okay, let's go back to Asher. And you can see we had a little bit of a glitch on our corrupted when you turn on the background. You'd see it even more. One thing that's helpful actually with animation, if you're kind of doing a fill check, what you do is you put your character over a bright red background, and all of a sudden all the holes jump right out like a sore thumb, and you can see them. What I'm gonna do, I'm in behind mode already, is I'm just gonna lasso these areas, and you'll see it fixes it right up. And that's just because when the original fills were done, some of these pixels got missed. Now, at the end of the day, would you really see it in the show? I don't know. Maybe not. But when you're talking about doing a sequence that's going to be the first thing people see when the show starts, you probably want to maybe attend to quality control. Right? Alright. And with that in mind, I'm going to go grab this brush and put it in erase mode so I can fix up this little problem right here. Fixie fixie. What time is it? 4:30. Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're going to have some of that corruption showing up throughout the breathing. So that's kind of a bummer because that means there's going to be a little extra work to do. Little niggly details, as they say. Little details. Those details will get you. They will get you. Ooh. Didn't want to be in erase mode for that. Okay, so, okay, this could be disastrous. Ah, I see what's going on. Oh yeah, this is disastrous. Okay, well, let's fix it this way. Let's redo some of these fills. Let's hit the fill tool. I'm going to turn the threshold down a little bit, but we're in behind mode. So I'm hoping This is a good example of where the the coloring work in Krita can be a bit of a clunker. So for, oh, who was it? Was it was it Mikhail? I don't remember who was asking about. Maybe it was Varia. Oh, it was Varia asked about the coloring process. This is actually a good example of the trade-off. You know, I'm having to fiddle a bit with it, as you can see. Redo some of these fills, but generally speaking, in Tahoma, this would probably be cleaner and quicker. In other words, the basic coloring is pretty good, and for some people, they would say it's better. I won't get into the reasons why. But if it doesn't go well, meaning typically in Tahoma, if it doesn't go well, what that means is that there's little corners and stuff that get missed. And plus, you always have the problem of leaks as well, where you wind up filling everything and you didn't mean to. But if it doesn't go well, it can be a real pain to fix. You can always fix it, but it's just kind of annoying. But it's not like it doesn't happen here in Krita all the time anyway. So it looks to me like the fill job I did on Mel, which I think, by the way, to be accurate, I believe I did the fill operations on Mel after I had changed the fill tool threshold and set it higher. And as you can see, the fills on Mel look real clean. So there it is. But, the overall look, though, I think looks great. I would say on our shadows, I'm going to go in and I'm going to just manually tweak some shadows here. So I'm hitting the G key so that I can get this little area under his belly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to manually animate that. Trying to use the liquify tool for this is probably stupid. I mean, it's kind of a lot faster to just redraw it. And by the way, I've been finding that to be the case more and more often, where I'm finding myself saying, when in doubt, just redraw the thing, man. And I'm pretty fast at redrawing. It's not like it takes that long to redraw something. So let's just keep going on this track. Yeah, let's go here. There. I think probably that should just be in shadow. It definitely simplifies things a bit. I don't like this. I'm going to hit the E key. Let's see. This shadow growing does not make sense. And again, that's because I used the animate tool, or I should say the free transform tool, in liquify mode. So I suppose this should be, if there's a disclaimer that should chase me around like a tail on a dog, it's probably the fact that even after doing this for well over a year, I'm still learning stuff every day. I mean, I'm still improving my process. I'm still looking for things that I can do better. And I try not to make too many really grand pronouncements about the right way to do everything, but I still do sometimes. And then what happens 2 weeks later, I'm doing something a completely different way. So why did I say that? Because here we have a case where I went through and tweaked these shadows with the liquify tool, which is definitely pretty easy. But then when I played it back, it's like, wait a second, that doesn't look good. So, gotta redo it. Gotta fix it, man. Fix it. Fix it. Yeah, look at the shadows crawling. Those shadows are just crawling. I just don't think they should. Man, I tell you, this is probably a bigger glitch than you might realize. I am going to actually draw a looped area around, like a selection, and I am actually going to get rid of all these leg shadows. And then, unfortunately, that means I'm going to have to add another layer over top. And let's see what we can do with this. We don't want to be in erase mode, silly. Don't be in erase mode, silly. So what I'm doing is I'm just redoing the shadow layer, and I'm hoping this will look good with just one shadow. In other words, not animating it. I don't really think I need to animate the shadow, but I could be wrong. The animation I did, though, was really jumping out at me as being egregious. So this shadow layer is 19. Is that 19%? I can't even tell. I can't read. Yep, I think it is. So let's do 19 on this one. Let's alpha lock it. And here's hoping, folks. If it works. Nah, it definitely does not work. Wow. This is actually one of the... Well, okay. You know what? The truth of the matter is that... Is this a thing where they say the exception proves the rule? Okay. In recent weeks, most of the time, I don't put layers on their own, or don't put shadows on their own layer. I'm just saying I'm going to be bold with it, and I bake the shadows right into the character. This is a perfect case where that's exactly what I should have done, because then when I animated the breathing, the shadows would have moved naturally right with the characters. So the problem that I'm running into here is there's no way that I can match the animation. In all reality, the solution is probably going to be to do this. It's probably going to be to go back to, quite literally, this drawing, put the shadows on the guy, and then redo this breathing effect. Because again, this is, I'm glad this happened, because it's something you guys have to see. This is the kind of thing where the flexibility you have with your tools to just do it a certain way or whatever, you don't really think about the gotchas. You don't really think about how this is going to backfire and actually look bad or cause a problem until you get into it and you realize, oh man, if I had baked the shadows into his belly and his garment and then did the stretching. Details, details, Kif. Details, Kif. Thank you, sir. When I premiere my first episode, I want BlendedPlanet, Blipton1, and Darren T in the audience. Right on. Right on, woman. And if I ever finish, you can come to mine. Huh. Okay. So, what we have here is a... That's that. Okay, so now, why do we have to do that? Well... And here what we're going to have to do, honestly, here's what has to happen. This shows you where it becomes a workflow thing, not the most fun thing in the world, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle around Asher's eye, and then I'm going to hit Control-Shift-I to invert the selection and then delete everything else. Because actually on this frame, the only thing that changes is his eye. And if I'm going to get the color and the shading and everything perfect here, and then reanimate it, Why am I gonna, you know, we're just gonna smack this eye over top of it. Now there is one little caveat to consider, which is that there are going to have to be shadows in that eye area. So, okay, yet another example of things you don't think about until it's too late. Okay, so actually I don't want to delete that yet. I'll delete it eventually, but what I'll do is I'll get the shadows on that eye correct and then delete everything that I can delete. So, here we go, folks. In the Asher layer, we're going to do this a completely different way, which is we're going to do alpha lock on the layer, use black, G key, in normal mode, and then turn the opacity here down to, I'll just pick 18 because 18 is a nice even number. And of course, I could do a separate shadow layer on the, you know, on his head, but I don't think that's really necessary. So I'm pretty sure I can duplicate what I did pretty closely. So actually, this has proven to be a tremendously good example of the kind of hiccups you can bump into if you're not careful. And it's almost impossible to be careful enough, actually. So, translation, it's always something. It really is. It's amazing how every time I've ever been like, I've really got my workflow, I know exactly how we're going to do this, and the very next scene you do, the very next shot, will wind up being an exception to the rule. You got to do it a different way. I've seen that happen so many times. At least I can laugh about it now, huh? Oops. Now the caveat here is I have to get my shadows correct on the first swipe, because if I have to go draw back over it, the shadows will build up on themselves like that. And we don't want that. Now, there are ways to fix it. I can turn the opacity back up to 100% and then just paint over this, which I'll probably do just to touch it up, right? But let's see. I think here I am actually going to use that doubling up to my advantage. Like so. Okay. Here, I think that'll probably be okay. And then we're going to want to have some indication of his knee there, and then wrap that around his little toesies. I think we're good. Okay. Save our work. Save early, save often. All right. So now we're going to redo these keys. Take them out. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to liquefy. And by the way, it's also important to note that this situation is also typical in that even though I had to go back and redo this, there's a good chance I'm going to like it better, number one. And number two, it really doesn't take that long at all. I think I am going to like it better because I'm doing it a little more conservatively this time. Yep. Did I get his chin to move? I'm not sure. Yep, look at that. See, that looks good. That's a little better. Okay, problem solved. And what did it take? 10 minutes to fix? So, I mean, just not that big of a deal. Okay, simple stuff can be challenging. Yeah, well, it's actually not that simple. 2 layers of shadow will always look satisfying. And 3, on a show like this, 3 will almost always look bad. It starts to make it look like you're trying to create a 3D look. Now, we actually have another problem that I missed, unfortunately, but I can fix it easily. Here's how. I'm going to go here, and I forgot to put shadows on his hands. So we want to actually crank all this up and do a regular shadow here, like that. And then we'll turn this layer down to 18 so it matches. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll just bake it down. We need to alpha lock it. So I better turn the background off so I can really see what I'm doing. And now I'm going to just hit Control E, and that bakes that extra shadow layer down into it. Okay, now here, again, all we need to do here is put the shadow on his eye and then just erase everything else except his eye. So, again, we'll go 18% like that. And then the only thing we need to do here is just select around his eye like that. Control Shift I, and then hit delete. So all we get is the eye for that particular pose, if you will. That works. Okay, we're in good shape. Alright, so now back to the, I think that the copy of Asher can be deleted. I don't think I need to keep that around. I would also say I'm not going to deal with the shadows on Mel at the moment. Let me save this. Okay. Right. Darren's, yeah. Darren's communicating with Yvette. Okay. So now, I would say, what I wanted to play around with is how this is going to be touched up with tints, and I'm just going to actually go like this. Just do a light like that. And then let me put that in overlay mode. Something like that. And then probably, I think what I should do here is actually, let's just take these two layers and move them up out of the group and save our work, because this is really going to be the Asher layer. So what I'm doing is I'm fiddling around with stuff to sculpt the lighting, you know, get this to look the way I think I'm going to want it to look. And then ultimately I'm going to have to emulate those things in Tahoma. I'm either going to have to cut and paste them into Tahoma this way, you know, or else I could cut and paste this layer, like that layer right there, I could cut and paste into Tahoma, and then in the schematic mix it with the, you know, Asher in overlay mode, and it'll look the same. You know, it's the same idea. So now here what I was thinking is, I was thinking about some kind of, you know, almost like a light from on high kind of situation. And now this kind of thing can get to be kind of a lot of work. All right, this I'm going to look at, yeah, definitely not overlay mode. I think normal mode for that. And then we'll ease that in. Maybe a little more aggressive touch there. But yeah, to really dial this shot in with what I have in my head is it's gonna take some work. This is not just a quick and dirty slough it off type of shot. Okay, and so then here the idea would be that this glow, actually I want behind him as well, so that's why I say it's a bit of work, because Oops. I can't believe I just did that. That's annoying. How did I not create a layer just now? That's pretty weird. Alright, I'm going to solo the Asher layer and make sure he's not boogered up. Okay, he's not. He's in good shape, so save that. Okay, so what I intended to do... Ah, it just happened again! Ah, this is driving me nuts. Wow. Okay, it's because I soloed Asher, and apparently I didn't click on this. Yikes, that was scary. That's some scary stuff, people. Okay, something like that. I'm just going to play around with this, though. I'm just going to play around with this. It's the idea of this. It's just like in this environment, you know. It's like this meditative kind of situation. And what I was thinking is maybe even integrating some, like some fireflies or some candles or something. I was thinking about experimenting with particle systems, maybe even in Tahoma. Money shot, right? You're right, Barry. That's what I would call it. Absolutely, it is. That's exactly the kind of shot I've often referred to as a money shot. You know, and you can animate this in Krita. Actually, you can animate the layer opacity. But you know, I'm thinking as I go here, friends. Thinking as I go. How we doing on time? 2:15. Almost 5 o'clock. Okay. Now, wouldn't his... If he was doing this, wouldn't these fingers be out like this, though? Oh my gosh. It's replete with mistakes. But, there's one bit of good news, though. And the good news is that the overall look of it is awesome. I mean, I think you guys will agree. That's a cool looking shot right there. The color, the crispness of it, it's really, that's where we want to be. Okay, so I think I'm thinking maybe I should stop because I really want to go back and dive into Tahoma and do a little bit of, I mean, it would just be way too boring for you guys to watch me study. But I really want to look into what could be done with particle systems. Like maybe we can animate a flickering candle, you know, even with the glow flickering around it, and then make that layer in Tahoma. Oh heck, let's just dink around with it here for a minute anyway. Let me get rid of that, and I'll probably won't keep any of this, but let's just get rid of that. So what we're saying is, let's get a nice rich color that might be a flame, let's say. Okay, and then let's just oh, lock alpha better be turned off. If you don't turn off lock alpha, you're not going to see anything. Okay, let's just try it this way. Let's go let's just turn on the onion skins. And by the way, do I have, oh, I do have automatic auto creation happening. So I'm just kind of Gonna turn the onions. I need to definitely adjust my onion skins. Those are really, really, really bold looking. Okay, so now the question is, and Darren, you're certainly welcome to weigh in here. I think I've done this like once ever, okay? But it seems to me that this is so sad. Like I said, this is probably not something you guys need to watch me do. I cannot remember. I can't even remember the first step to creating a particle system. Darren, where are you when I need you, buddy? Panels. Is it? There's the scene, there's the output. If I don't have something useful figured out here, like within a minute or two. Okay, here we go. Shaders. Well, now this is interesting. Caustic's fireball. Now, to be fair, I was specifically wanting to do a particle system, but that's not necessarily. Here we go. Particles. They've got all kinds of presets. My goodness. Let's stop there. You guys explore this at home and report back to me what you learn, because I have a feeling there's a lot of really cool power here with the particle systems, and I just haven't spent any time with them, but for some reason I'm really sure it would be useful here somehow. But I think with that I'll call it a day. And hey, there goes Valerie. What a coincidence. So anyway, that I'm gonna call it good, and it's been almost 2.5 hours, and I like this as an ending point, and then hopefully I'll be able to come back and maybe report what I learned about particle systems in Tahoma. Cool beans. All right. Thanks for tuning in.